I didn't care about the furniture, not the house, not even the car. When she said she wanted everything in the divorce, I told my lawyer to give it to her. Let her think she'd won. But what she didn't know was that while she was busy taking my things, I was quietly collecting everything that could take her down. Because I wasn't just going to move on. I was going to bury her. My name is Nathan Hale. I'm 38 years old, and I used to believe love was something worth sacrificing for. Something noble. Something real. But sometimes, love is just a very polite way of giving someone permission to destroy you slowly. I met Isabel 10 years ago. I was 28, she was 26. We both worked in law. I was an overworked associate trying to prove myself, and she was a paralegal at a neighboring firm, sharp as glass and just as cold if you touched her wrong. But you wouldn't notice the sharp edges at first. Isabel was magnetic, the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned it and made you grateful she looked your way. I first saw her at a charity dinner organized by our firms. She was arguing with a judge, politely but firmly, about a court precedent I barely remembered from law school. She made him blink. And then she laughed. That laugh? I chased it for years. We started dating a few weeks later. She was intense, driven, always thinking 5 steps ahead. Our conversations were fast and sharp. We could spend hours debating legal theory or ethics or what makes a good whiskey. I thought we were equals. I was wrong. She didn't want a partner. She wanted an audience. But I didn't see it then. Not in those first 2 years. I saw her ambition as a mirror of mine. I thought, we'll rise together. We'll build something. And when she suggested marriage, I didn't hesitate. I proposed 2 days later. We got married in Vermont, just like she wanted. It snowed that morning. I remember watching her step out in a white dress against the backdrop of fresh snow and thinking, I've made it. I had the woman, the job, the life. We were the couple our friends envied. But Isabel's love came with conditions. Invisible at first, like lines written in invisible ink. She had opinions on everything, what we ate, who we saw, how I dressed, how often I called my mother. It was always subtle, a gentle nudge, a quiet sigh, a sarcastic comment dropped like a stone in a still pond. Over time, I started adjusting to her preferences. Not because she demanded it, because she made me feel like I was disappointing her if I didn't. That's what control looks like when it wears lipstick and a smile. By year 4, I realized I was living inside someone else's design. The apartment looked like a magazine spread, curated by her. Our vacations, always aligned with her networking events. Even our dinner parties were strategic, hosting people who could help us get ahead. But I still told myself it was fine, that this was adulthood, that marriage was compromise. Then came year 5, and the silence. By the 5th year of our marriage, we no longer spoke unless we had to. No fighting, no yelling, just absence. We were 2 professionals sharing a luxury apartment in Tribeca, attending the same galas and fundraisers, smiling in pictures that screamed power couple, and then going to bed on opposite sides of a king-sized mattress like strangers. I tried, in the beginning, to fix it. I booked a weekend trip to Maine, just the 2 of us. She canceled it the night before because a senior partner at her firm invited her to a brunch. I suggested therapy. She said it was for people too weak to manage their own relationships. So I stopped suggesting. I poured myself into work, took more cases, brought home longer hours. I told myself it was mutual, that maybe we were just growing in different directions. But deep down, I knew. She was already gone. I just hadn't caught her body leaving the room yet. And then one night, I did. It was late, a Friday. I remember the rain. I'd stayed at the office past 10, grinding through a securities fraud case with a deadline that wouldn't wait. When I got home, Isabel wasn't there. She'd texted earlier that she was at a client dinner, common enough not to raise suspicion. I went to the bedroom, took off my tie, and remembered I needed a copy of an old case file I had backed up on her work computer. We sometimes shared documents when helping each other. She'd offered access many times before. I opened her laptop. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for trouble. But it found me anyway. Her iMessage app opened automatically. And right there, filling the screen, was a thread with David Langston, one of the senior partners at her firm. A man I'd shaken hands with at least a dozen times. A man who'd asked us once to dinner, smiling at me like we were friends. The messages weren't vague. They were filthy, detailed, eager. Mentions of hotels, mentions of things she'd never said to me in a decade together. Photos, emojis, comments about how the old man, me, didn't suspect a thing. I sat there in front of the glowing screen, my fingers resting on the keyboard, not moving. My breath felt slow, too slow, like I was outside my own body. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even close the laptop. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of whiskey I'd been saving for a celebration that never came. I sat at the counter for a long time, listening to the ticking of the clock and the rain hitting the windows. And I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I knew Isabel too well. Confrontation was her playground. She would twist, cry, deflect, accuse, and I'd end up apologizing somehow for invading her privacy. She was a master of narrative, but she couldn't rewrite evidence. So I took screenshots, dozens, every message, every photo. I uploaded them to a secure cloud, printed backups, stored them in a locked drawer at my office, dated everything, marked the timestamps, and I started planning. The next morning, I went for a run. Not because I wanted to, I hadn't run in months, but because I needed to feel something familiar. The sound of my sneakers on pavement, the burn in my lungs, the rhythmic motion of my body forcing itself forward. It gave me clarity. I stopped halfway across the Brooklyn Bridge and looked out at the skyline. This city had taught me a lot. How to survive, how to fight, how to lose. But now, it was going to teach Isabel what it felt like to lose control. That afternoon, I called a woman I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, Gloria Mendez, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney I used to refer clients to when conflict of interest kept me off a case. We weren't friends, but we respected each other. That was enough. I met her at a quiet cafe on the Upper East Side. She wore all black, no makeup, hair in a tight bun. She looked at me across the table and said, "Divorce?" "Yeah," I said, "but not the kind you settle over wine and tissues." "Tell me." So I did. Not everything, not yet, but enough. The affair, the manipulation, the money. When I finished, she nodded slowly, tapped her fingers twice on the table and said, "She's going to come for blood." "I know." "Are you?" I took a sip of bitter coffee and looked her in the eye. "I'm going for bone." Isabel filed first. Of course she did. I expected it. The pageantry, the performance. She served the papers at my office on a Tuesday morning, hand-delivered by a courier who wore a smug look he probably didn't understand. My assistant brought them in with a confused expression. I nodded, took them calmly, didn't open the envelope until I got home. The petition cited irreconcilable differences, but she'd added a personal affidavit, 5 pages long. It read more like a social media caption than a legal document. Emotional neglect, lack of presence. A relationship starved of intimacy and mutual growth. Beautiful language for someone who'd been cheating with a married man. She even mentioned how I struggled with vulnerability. I laughed when I read that part. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. She wanted the apartment, the car, the joint savings, half of my pension. She even listed my mother's heirloom watch, a Rolex my dad gave me before he died, under community property. It wasn't just about winning, it was about stripping me bare. Isabel wanted to erase me, to carve out my pride with a diamond-cut scalpel and walk away with a smile. But here's the thing about people like her. They think silence means surrender. They mistake stillness for weakness. They forget that calm water hides deep currents. I let her think she was ahead, let her tell her version to anyone who'd listen. She played the victim well, eyes wide, tone quiet, phrases like, "It just wasn't working and I didn't feel seen." She even unfollowed me on every platform and made a post the next day with some inspirational quote about rebirth. Her friends rallied around her. Our mutual contacts grew distant from me. Invitations stopped. My inbox was quiet. It was the loneliest I'd ever felt, being vilified for staying quiet, for not defending myself publicly. But that's what strategy demands, patience. Because behind the curtain, I was building something. I started with our finances. Back when we still trusted each other, or I trusted her, we'd opened a secondary investment account. She called it a rainy day fund. I contributed. So did she. Eventually, it faded into the background, something we rarely talked about. But I had the login, and when I checked, I found transfers, small at first, then bolder. Roughly $3,000 a month, all sent to a private account at a foreign bank I'd never heard her mention. That's when I called Matt Jennings. Matt was a forensic accountant. We'd worked together on a corporate case years back. I knew he had the tools to trace money through walls. I sent him the documents and didn't tell him much, just asked for clarity. 3 days later, he sent me a report. 17 pages, organized, clear, undeniable. At least $94,000 siphoned quietly over 3 years. Next, I accessed her old iCloud. Isabel, for all her cunning, wasn't great with tech. She'd set up cloud syncing years ago for convenience. She never turned it off. Through it, I retrieved a treasure trove, emails between her and David Langston, meeting invites, hotel bookings labeled as client follow-up dinners, dozens of screenshots, and one file that made my jaw clench. A receipt for $2,100 in Cartier cufflinks, purchased with our shared credit card points, with a gift message, "To my favorite partner, in every way." I didn't even know she'd used the points, but I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. And then came the recording. A voice memo Isabel had sent to a friend, probably drunk, based on her tone and laughter. "He has no idea. I'm gonna clean him out. The apartment, the car, even that dumb watch he loves. He'll probably cry and thank me when it's over." The friend giggled. Isabel added, "Honestly, he deserves it. He let himself get boring." I replayed that line 4 times. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it reminded me exactly who I was dealing with. With Gloria's help, we built a case. Not one of emotion, not one of betrayal. One of facts, assets, misconduct, and strategy. And once the puzzle was complete, we turned our attention to David Langston. Because if you want to bring down a queen, sometimes you start by shaking the castle she hides in. David Langston wasn't just a fling. He was a name on plaques, a face on newsletters, a man who sat on multiple bar committees and had his sights set on a judgeship within the next few years. The kind of man who gave speeches about integrity while unbuttoning his shirt in hotel elevators. He also had a wife, 2 daughters, a golden retriever named Daisy, and a house in Scarsdale. He had everything to lose, and I had the match in hand. I invited him to lunch, carefully, politely. I didn't write "we need to talk." I used his language. I framed it as a professional favor, a discussion between 2 colleagues who needed to clear the air about recent developments. He replied in under an hour. "Fine, 1 p.m. Barclays, don't be late." I wasn't. He arrived wearing a navy suit, no tie, looking rushed and mildly annoyed. He didn't shake my hand. Didn't sit until I did. "Let's skip the pleasantries," he said. "Sure." I reached into my briefcase and slid a silver flash drive across the table. Everything's on here: emails, screenshots, calendar syncs, one voice memo. Not from you, but damning, nonetheless. He stared at it, said nothing. I leaned in slightly. You're a smart man, David. You know how fast news travels in our circle. You know how hard it is to rebuild once someone starts whispering about ethical violations and breaches of trust. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I kept going. I'm not here to shame you. I don't care about your personal life. But I do care about mine. And Isabel is your mess now, not mine. I want you to clean it up and disappear. He finally spoke. You want me to break up with her? I want you to vanish from her life. Cold cut, no drama, no last words, just gone. If you don't, I let the contents of this drive fall into the hands of the right people. He exhaled, slowly. And what do you get out of this? Peace and leverage. He looked at the flash drive again. And if I go to her and tell her you threatened me? I smiled. Then I release it anyway. And the story won't be about infidelity. It'll be about a senior partner misusing firm funds, violating ethics codes, and compromising case integrity while sleeping with a married junior associate. You'll lose more than your marriage. You'll lose your name. He didn't finish his lunch. He didn't touch the drink he ordered. He left without another word. And the next day, Isabel got a short message that read, "This was fun, but it's over. Don't contact me again." She came home that night in a mood I hadn't seen in years, flustered, shaken, trying not to let me see it. But I saw. She poured wine too fast, broke a glass in the sink, snapped at the dog for nothing. And I just sat in silence, watching the cracks form in the armor she'd worn so perfectly. She didn't know I was behind it, but I could see suspicion in her eyes. And that was fine. Suspicion keeps people sloppy. Then she pivoted, went on the offensive. She began telling friends that I was unstable, that I'd been controlling, that I monitored her messages, isolated her from others. She implied I had emotional issues, claimed she felt unsafe at home. One friend, a former groomsman, texted me asking if I was okay, gently probing, like he expected me to break down. I didn't respond. I saved the message. Gloria and I worked in the background, quietly, efficiently. We built timelines, categorized documents, prepared depositions. She contacted a judge we both respected and ensured that our trial would be open record. Nothing sealed, nothing hidden. I want this to be public, I said. Noted, Gloria replied. And when the court date came, I was ready. Isabel walked in like a winner, flanked by two high-end litigators in tailored suits, folders in hand, confidence in her stride. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to her attorneys like I was beneath acknowledgement. She was about to learn what it felt like to lose not just a case, but a carefully constructed identity. The courtroom felt colder than usual. Not the temperature, the atmosphere, tense, expectant. The kind of silence that settles in when people sense something important is about to happen. I sat beside Gloria, calm, focused. The storm inside me from months ago had burned out. What remained was steel. Isabel, on the other hand, was all performance. She wore a pearl-colored suit, subtle makeup, and a smile that said, "Watch me win." I almost admired her confidence. Almost. Her lawyers went first. They painted a story of abandonment, a marriage hollowed out by workaholism, emotional starvation. My client tried to salvage the relationship, one of them said. She begged for intimacy, support, partnership. What she received was silence. It was rehearsed, polished, designed to move a jury if there had been one. But there wasn't. Just a judge. A seasoned, sharp-eyed woman who'd seen more broken marriages than either of us could imagine. And she wasn't swayed by theatrics. Then Gloria stood. No grand gestures, No drama, just precision. "We have documentation," she said simply, "including financial records, unauthorized transactions, infidelity, and a voice recording relevant to the petitioner's intent." Objection. Overruled. And then, we laid it all out. The siphoned funds, the offshore transfers, the stolen credit points, the messages between Isabel and David, the meeting logs, the emails, the receipts, and finally, the recording. We played it aloud. No warning, no soft introduction, just Isabel's voice, loud and clear, echoing through the courtroom. "I'm gonna clean him out. The apartment, the car, even that dumb watch he loves. He'll probably cry and thank me when it's over." You could feel the energy shift. Her attorneys looked stunned. Isabel sat motionless, her jaw slightly slack. The judge didn't blink. Silence followed. And then Gloria spoke again. "With this court's permission, we request not only dismissal of the petitioner's claims, but a redistribution of marital assets in light of bad faith conduct." We won. Not just the apartment, not just the car. Everything she'd tried to take, I got it back. The judge even offered us the chance to file for punitive damages based on emotional and reputational harm. I didn't take it, because by then, I had something better. Isabel's reputation was already bleeding. Lawyers talk, firms talk, stories, even whispered, ripple fast. I never went public, but I didn't need to. A few off-the-record conversations. A journalist I knew from law school. A few anonymous threads on Reddit. Nothing explicit, just breadcrumbs. And the internet did the rest. Isabel's name began showing up in forums. Not directly, but clearly. A rising associate at a Manhattan firm caught in a scandal with a married partner. Manipulated joint finances. Voice memo leaked in court. She denied it, of course. Made vague posts about misogyny and abuse of privacy. But her firm removed her from a major case 2 weeks later. She was pulled from public-facing roles. Her promotion was delayed. Eventually, she disappeared from the firm website altogether. Word had gotten out, and no rebranding could clean it. I moved out of the apartment months later. By choice. I didn't want to keep living in the shell of that marriage. I sold it, paid off every debt, and booked a flight to Greece, then Japan, then Norway. I started writing, nothing public, just thoughts, healing. I took on smaller clients, did pro bono work for divorcees who couldn't afford protection. Not to relive my pain, but to make sure others didn't have to live it alone. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not confronting her sooner. If I should have screamed, thrown her things out, humiliated her the way she did me. But that's the thing about revenge. Real revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, legal, strategic. It's her checking her LinkedIn at 2 a.m. and realizing no one's viewed her profile in weeks. It's her scrolling through old pictures and wondering how the man she underestimated became the one who ended her carefully curated empire. My name is Nathan Hale. I'm 38 years old, and I didn't just survive the divorce. I rewrote the ending.